Fano, 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 ተኩሶ ሲነጉድ የፍሪ ልምደኛ ለፊት ጋዳይ ፋኖ እንደመጋኛ እረተው በሉት ያምባል ሁሉ ሰጠው ለነፋስ አንጓሉ 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 እንደ ቆላው እንደ ግሪሳ እንደ ቆላው እንደ ግሪሳ ያረፈው ልቤ ደሞ ተነሳ ደሞ ተነሳ ፋኖ 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 ግራር ተልጦ ደሞ አይላትም ቁርጣሽኝ እንደ ውሃት ፋኖ ፋኖ ሐረርለው ጋዴ ምን ያህል ይርቃል ተዝባርሽኝ ጊዜ እንባዬ ይመጣል ልም ያለው ጫካ ልም ያለው ዱር ሲነጋገር ያድራል ከሙዜሩ ጋር እንኳን ባልንጀራ ልብ አይታመን ፋኖ 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 አገሩ ገባ ሳይሰናበት ያ ጀግና ወታደር ሰው ማረገኝ ፋኖ 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 በላው በርጨቃ ልኳንዳው ምን ሆኖ የልቤ አስታማሚ ናፋኖ 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 ኡሆ ተው ሳቡ 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 መሸብኝ ይጁ ቢራራት ግብር አለብን ፋኖ ፋኖ የወንድ ልጅ እናት ታጠቂ በገመድ የወንድ ልጅ እናት ታጠቂ በገመድ ልሽና ሞራ እንጂ አይቀብረውም ዘመድ ፋኖ 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 ከባልንጀራው ማታ የተለየ ከባልንጀራው ማታ የተለየ እንደ አጥቢያ ኮከብ ሲነጋ ታየ ፋኖ ፋኖ እረተው በሉት ያን ባለቡሎ ሰጠው ለነፋስ አንጓሎ ፋኖ ፋኖ አለችኝ ፍንን አርጋትና እንዳልብሱ መጣ ማለቷ ቀረና ፋኖ የምር ተኳሹን እኛ ስናውቀው ዝናር በቅፌን ማንደባለቀው ፋኖ ወዘት በይ ልቤ እንደ ጀበና አልወጣልሽም የጦር ባፈና የtorba fano.
Unlimited online sends with $0 transfer fee. Valid through November 30th. When you send your first transfer before October 30th.
የአባይ ውሃ ሞልቶ ይፈሳል በይለው ብርቱካኔ ምነው በዕድሜ መጣሽ ደህና አይደለሽም ወይ?
What up? What up? What up? What up? going on, people?
ምነው
Yeah, so
በዕድሜ መጣሽ ደህና አይደለሽም ወይ?
listen, I'm telling you,
አባይን ተሻግሮ አባይ አለ ወይ?
the bravery of Amhara Fano is unmistakable,
ሞትና
very unmistakable. You know what I mean? It's just pretty much it's widely discussed in Ethiopian society right now, especially among the Amharan people. You know what I'm saying? It's deeply tied to ideas of resistance or self-defense, or what I mean, just cultural identity and sacrifice. And obviously the Fano is the heart of everything, especially in Amhara. Obviously Fano can be described as a militia, movement originated in the Amhara region, and a lot of times it's described as ethio-nationalist, but honestly, I don't know. You can take that the wrong way sometimes, because when people call nationalists, they took as somebody that only like certain things. No, that's not how it is. They're just fighting for themselves. And rooted in traditional volunteer fighters. That's the thing you got to understand about Fano. Straight up volunteer fighters, always responding to threats and their communities. Historically, Fano evokes, irregular fighters or like local militia stepping into pretty much a gaps of security or sovereignty. It's just like especially when PPLF and their crew was, walking in like in 3-4 years ago, whatever. They stepped up. And, especially when formal state structures were weak, which is the ANDF was or perceived to be neglectful, which was the truth. Obviously, a Fano fighter sometimes, they acted in coordination with the ANDF because they had to, during the triad conflict. Yet, the relationship has been, fraught with, turning points where obviously our Fano fighters have clashed with the federal military. And obviously this newest conflict started mid-2023 onward, and obviously Fano has been actively involved in resisting, what they view as a threat to Amhara, which has been obviously for as long as we can remember now. Identities and autonomy is as well as responding to our perceived injustice. There's a lot of injustice. Not even, to be honest, it's not perceived. It's the truth. So the bravery attributed to Fano is both symbolic and tactical, and it's definitely rooted in a long memory of Amhara warriors. And hey, man, they fight for our people pretty much. They fight for our peoples. Some of these, their bravery can be, described as like the willingness to confront overwhelming force, which the ENDF has, obviously. And obviously, despite lacking, large-scale conventional military superiority, our Fano fighters have engaged in in defensive battles against the ADF. Obviously, a lot of people are lost, risking death and capture and reprisals. Now, obviously, recently the federal military claimed to have killed over, a few hundred Fano Rainier clashes, which obviously, you can take it this way or that way, but I don't believe it because you gotta catch Fano, man, and you gotta catch Fano really like congregating. Fano is not mechanized, so it's gonna be hard to catch Fano to kill 300 of them at one time or 200 of them. You know what I'm saying? But it's definitely violent. It's really violent. And obviously, Fano carries out these operations in contested or hostile terrain, sometimes with limited logistics or supplies. Yeah, and especially like, for example, Northern Amara taking control of, some of the rural corridors or roadways as part of an effort to, to assert control or challenge the president, the federal presence, which is what you do. You go in, do your little thing, what you got to do, destroy a few, whatever, and then leave.
See this giant check?
Obviously, this kind of courage is definitely.
But are you? Most people don't even realize
Get
they're
out of here. All this courage is kind of, it's a risk taking, but it's definitely, because a lot of the fighters, they do take personal sacrifice and they all have local roots. And many Fano fighters are local from Amhara region. People from, the same communities, they aim to protect. So their decision to pick up arms carries, a deeper personal risk to their families, to their homes and communities. They all come under retaliation. That's what happens, unfortunately, when you are going against a government that actually has so much more money invested. Now, the movement draws on a traditional or individual readiness. Historically, the Amhara military culture, placed emphasis on each man learning arms, defending his local domain, and upholding, honor, even when formal support was lacking. Now, the voluntary nature is also emphasized. Fano is often framed as arising from popular will rather than state, compilation, meaning people, basically the Fano fighters choose to fight. Now, this voluntary commitment under danger is part of what is seen as, courageous. It's very courageous what they do. And it's also very symbolic, and it gives morale, courage. Pretty much, beyond the battlefield valor, the bravery of Fano is also invoked as a moral stand, now resisting perceived injustice, demanding, respect of Amhara rights, defending identity and territory. Now, the narrative of martyrdom is strong. Those who fall are often celebrated as martyrs. Their memory is used, obviously, to inspire others. Now, the actions are often depicted as not only, defensive, but also, restoring dignity, ensuring that Amharas are not silenced. Now, Fano has developed pretty much a decentralized command structure, meaning, smaller units can act very flexible. They're very flexible under pressure. They often seize weapons from the enemy. Like recently, if you've noticed in a lot of these engagements, they have captured like the Zu-23. Now, keep in mind the Zu-23s are more like anti-aircraft, but they're also, they're not mobilized, what I'm saying? Because they need, most Zu-23 need like a motor to move. Now, Fano doesn't move like that, what I'm saying? Because obviously those, the ENDF has them large drones where they come around. Pretty much anything moving, it doesn't matter. They can. Uh, it could be a freaking, what do you call it, like an ambulance. They would just bomb it, thinking of like, hey, you know what, this ambulance must be carrying like a couple hundred or whatever. Doesn't. I'll just put a number out there, like 10, 20, 30, whatever, of fighters that have been, hurt or injured or whatever. You know what I'm saying? During so the Zu-23s, they're mostly anti-aircraft, but they require, to be moved. So I don't think they have the training for it, but it would be nice if you are able to get them trainings for stuff like that. Not only training, I think the more they capture all these troops, they probably end up getting, day by day they are learning the new stuff from the weapons that they have captured. But you still cannot, because they're not mechanized, obviously, so you can't really move these things everywhere.
We can get any of these windows custom made.
About this commercial.
Yes.
Let me get rid of
You
the,
get the
there's
quad
the
style,
music
you
going
really
on
can.
here on the side.
And at a more affordable.
All right. Anyway, even after setbacks or losses, to be honest, Fanos have shown the capacity to reemerge or regroup, which is really a sign of listen, they are sold on everything. It's basically they say, listen, this is us. This is for our survival. And they've been fighting under adversity from the day one, because they were told to disarm right after the war with Tigray, and they were like, wait a second, why do we need to disarm? And you're not telling to disarm completely. That was the thing. Y'all notice, if y'all remember that the treaty they had with the TPLF somewhere in South Africa, they let TPLF troops keep a lot of their arms, but they told Amhara to disarm. They're like, no, we're not going to do that. Obviously, you've heard a few things like, oh, Fano's been harboring civilians. Nah, man, they're protecting civilians. Now, the thing I see there are a lot of things. Keep in mind, bravery does not mean, it doesn't come without controversies, obviously, because you're going to see a lot of people have their own portrayal of Fano's courage. So you're not going to make everybody happy. You're not going to satisfy everybody. You're always going to have somebody that's going to say, hey, you know what? Yeah, they're doing this, but they also, doing something bad like this. Like, come on, man. Seriously. I mean, unfortunately, you're always going to have somebody that's going to be, always look at the negative, but the positive is always going to outweigh the negatives. Obviously, anytime there is an operation, surrounding civilians population, it can be caught in crossfire, or they also suffer reprisals from the ENDF or the militias out there. But that's a risk that they're taking, but because the people are with them. Their people are really with them, obviously, the thing about it, the bravery of Fano is not just in physical struggle, but in what it stands for. A claim that Amhara communities will not submit silently to what they what they see as a marginalization. Because they've been marginalized. We've been, as Amhara, been marginalized for years now. They say technically we're the second the second largest population, but I believe we are the largest population, out there. Because of the deep roots in local communities, their action is seen by supporters as more authentic, courageous, even, sacrificial, because if you notice a lot of the things that you notice with the Oromo fighters, and these people going out there just slaughtering like people that doesn't look like it. You don't see that with Fano. Seriously. Now the narrative ties them to historical resistance movement, including like resistance to foreign invasions, such as with the war with the Italians, and a cultural memory of warrior ethics. You definitely That's something we've always had. And with that, Amhara have always been marginalized. Political exclusion, being that sideline and national or regional governance, quotas and appointments. That's something that's been going on for the last, I don't know, probably 40, 50 years maybe. Um, you know, it's definitely been a very disadvantage economically, loss of access to resource, jobs, or being discriminated against economic opportunities. Uh, the cultural suppression now, restrictions such as formal or informal, such as based on your language, identity, memory, heritage, and all that. And obviously, you've seen a lot of violence also. The displacement, insecurity. There have been targeted attacks against kids, not only kids, women, children, the elderly, everybody. Targeted attacks, killings, forced displacement, and obviously they've been taking lands by force also. you know, or some of these disputed territories. Now you can say, Walkai, and a lot of Walkai people, they don't want nothing to do with the TPLF, or even though they call it Western Tigray. I mean, historically, to be honest, it's been a lot. Majority of the Walkai people call themselves Amharans. You know what I'm saying? Now, and they've been, all their boundaries have been redrawn, just like I said about Walkai. Now, a lot of these former marginalizations are after, they're interlocked. Political exclusion makes, economic discriminations easier, obviously. Now, violence reinforces fears and silence. Before 1991, obviously, the Amhara historically were, central to the Ethiopian state, especially during the imperial times when obviously, the Amhara influenced a lot of politics, culture, and administrations. But the thing is, to be honest, even that time it was actually mixed, but they just call it Amhara because a lot of, especially the language is Amharic. Now, some of the ethnic groups felt they were suppressed by Amhara dominance. Now, after 1991, there came the ethnic federalism. Now, after the Derg was overthrown, I think it was in 1991. Obviously, the TPLF adopted an ethnic federalist system, which basically was dominated by the TPLF. The new structure attempted to decentralize powers to ethnically defined states. But critics argue that the system also enabled new forms of elite control of exclusion of certain groups, which is the truth. For much of the 1990s through the 2010s, the TPLF was very dominant force in the federal government, and obviously some of the Amhara critics allege that under the TPLF, that coalition, all the Amhara interests were sidelined in decision making, such as resource allocation and federal appointments, and that's definitely true. Now, the shift from Amhara as central power holders to being one of the many ethnic group was meant to rebalance, but some argue it was created big time as an inequality. Now, there's a lot of things that you can do. I mean, honestly, at the end of the day, if you really want the country to go forward, we must work together. You can't just, because this shit where basically they say, "Oh, I just want this, I want that." You want if you're rooting for your what do you call it, for your ethnicity, then it's a moot point. It's really not going to do shit. So there's a lot of traumas. There's a lot of things that are involved. So in order for the country to move forward, to be honest, we need leadership that's going to be like, listen, I don't care about your ethnicity. I just want the country to grow. But at the same time, we don't want to marginalize people. But that's anyway. I'll probably come back here in a couple of days. Go forward. Yeah, have a good night.